And so strong words from Vince Cable then, Kevin Green. I mean, he says that some companies are exploiting workers in the UK with these contracts. Is he right?
No, we don't think there's anything inherently wrong with the contracts themselves. I think there's often instances where employers aren't managing them particularly effectively. You know, our view is if you're very clear when someone joins what the expectation is in terms of the average hours, and most people on these contracts work 20, 21 hours, that's what the data shows us, and then you manage the rotoring in an effective way, it can work for both parties. So we don't think there's anything wrong with the contracts, but you will get employers that don't use it particularly well, as you do in all sorts of work.
And I suppose, Ben Moxham, it's a case of this job is better than no job or contract's better than no contract if you had to make a choice.
Well, in these economic circumstances, and a worker takes that choice, we say that's hardly a fair choice. We're hearing story after story of workers on these contracts living lives of painful uncertainty, waiting by the phone to figure out whether or not they're going to get a shift next week. That makes it very, very difficult to plan.
When you say
budget.
You're hearing these stories, where are you hearing them from?
Well, our union members represent workers from all corners of the economy. We're hearing stories in ports, railways, journalism, the healthcare sector, education. The list goes on and on and on. And I think what the latest research shows is that they've really spread like wildfire across the economy.
I mean, it's still a very small percentage. I mean, the official figures is under 1%. Even if you take the CIPD figures today, it's 3% of the working population, so it's still quite a small proportion. And the data seems to say that most people are quite happy with these contracts. Both the CIPD data shows that 80% of people aren't looking for alternative work or aren't looking for alternative hours, so they must be pretty content with the work that they're currently doing. So I think what you're hearing is lots of sort of anecdotal stories and lots of people saber rattling because they don't like flexibility. They'd rather have mass unemployment.
Just a couple of responses to that. Since the crash in 2008, half of the new jobs in the British economy have been non-permanent jobs. We are creating a two-tier workforce that is grossly unequal. And as a result of that, British workers have suffered the biggest pay squeeze since Victorian times. We've suffered a pay cut of about £52 billion. Now, that's not just hurting workers on these sort of contracts, but it's hurting businesses in the high street where workers simply aren't spending that sort of money. I just want to pick up on a point that Kevin made about that survey. What it says was, I think 16% of workers wanted more hours on the contracts. But the survey also said that 2 in 5 workers on 0 hours contracts are actually in full-time work. They don't need to be on a 0 hours contract. And I've had an employee in education say to me, I was zeroed down the other day. I thought I was a permanent worker. They rang me up and told me I have no more hours.
And that's clearly what I mean about you've got to be very clear at the beginning of these relationships about the expectation.
You also said that a lot of this is anecdotal, didn't you, Kevin Green? But we've interviewed a lady called Helen Pattinson who's worked under one of these contracts. Let's see what impact it had on her life.
You've got people who need to live off these contracts all the time, no idea how many hours are going to work if they can pay their rent. Life isn't flexible, you need to eat every day, you need to pay your rent. If my life isn't flexible, why should my job be? My job needs to mirror what I need in life.
Could you live like that, Kevin Green? If your employer said to you, oh, we don't need you tomorrow, how would you pay your mortgage?
I wouldn't be very pleased, and I don't think you can condone some of the way that some of these contracts work, but that doesn't mean you should outrule the contracts. We want our businesses in the UK to be successful. We want them to employ as many people, and that means we need flexibility. We're working in a global labour market. We want our businesses to compete and be successful, and what they need to do is to create jobs. And that means that you need a range of different employment models.
Ben Moxham, if you ban them, which a lot of unions would like, you'd have more people unemployed. Do you really want that?
We're not calling for a ban.
What are you calling for then?
We accept that there are circumstances where 0 hours contracts might be helpful for a genuinely self-employed freelancer. But we're seeing 0 hours contracts in huge numbers, not anecdotal evidence, 300,000 workers in the social care sector alone. That's flexibility that is about making it cheaper to employ people.
That is an estimate. That's not official figures.
That's from a freedom of information request from the government. You can't get more official than that. Also, Sports Direct is employing 90% of its staff on 0 hours contracts. That's not about flexibility. There's a lot of very good forms of flexibility out there which we advocate for.
We do need flexibility. We need our businesses to succeed,
Let Kevin Green in.
We need businesses to succeed, and that means they do need flexibility. They're competing in very, very difficult marketplaces. For example, domiciliary care. If it wasn't for flexible contracts, if it wasn't for 0 hour contracts, we wouldn't be able to provide care for people in their homes.
But what about not giving sick pay? I mean, we've had lots of emails on this. What about the fact that, when this is from Lucy LaBelle, says you haven't got a leg to stand on if you're made redundant, if you're unfairly dismissed. There's
They get
lack
full
of holiday
protection rights. They get full protection rights. They're employed
Well,
on
this
contracts.
lady says she's on a zero contract and she doesn't. So
They are. They're entitled if they're on it. They're covered by the same employment legislation as full-time or part-time employees. They're under, in most circumstances, they're directly employed by the organisation. So they're entitled to national minimum wage. They're entitled to
sick pay,
holiday pay. Absolutely. And if they're not, then
Well,
they've got the right redress as any other
they're not.
employee has got.
0 hours contracts are a legal nightmare. We've heard many workplaces where people aren't getting these entitlements. They could probably take
But
their
that's the same
employer
in
to
any
court.
workplace. You know, these people are entitled to, we need to be very careful here, and the trade unions are spreading stories. You know, it is absolutely important that these individuals understand that they are entitled to the same employment protection.
And just to wrap up, you don't offer them at your organisations, do you?
We don't.
Neither do we.
But they are on the rise in journalism.
Okay, well, should be on the lookout. Thanks very much for joining us tonight.